Founded in 2010, Cave Urban is a collaborative design studio that brings together artists, architects, and sculptors to explore the relevance of traditional lightweight structures in modern designs and blend the fields of art and architecture. The studio places strong emphasis on working with communities to provide a platform for community engagement and education, fostering partnerships, and also using sustainable materials sourced locally and recycled, ensuring that these principles are at the heart of every project. We are joined now by Juan Pablo, the co-founder and creative director of Cave Urban, to chat about embracing lifetime sustainability in design. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Karina. Thanks for the invitation.
The pleasure is ours. So will you first tell us about your studio and about the firm?
Yeah, so look, Cave Urban started around 2010. Nikki Long was running an architectural firm, and she was very keen in doing something a little bit different with a sustainable take and explore natural materials and contemporary design of vernacular architecture. So that was sort of her interest. And we started the firm together with her son Jed around 2010, 2011. And we really started as an R&D practice, like research and development. And we spent the first good 3 years researching around the world, work especially with bamboo and lightweight structures. So the idea was to sort of learn from the traditional ways of building with these materials and then sort of reinterpret the vernacular architecture into a contemporary design. And in this sort of journey, the practice was kind of inviting and sponsoring different experts in the field from around the world. One of them, Wan Wen-chi from Taiwan, that he weaves giant structures with bamboo. We work with George Cuvillier from Belgium, which also works with bamboo. We did field trips to Thailand, to Vietnam, relations with Indonesia, and start sort of creating a network and connecting with an already existing network of bamboo enthusiasts or bamboo experts around the world. So we sort of started with open eyes, open ears, trying to see what was around and compile a folio of those examples that really excite us, that were really inspiring for us, and start sort of connecting with them very kind of slowly, but every year we'll kind of engage with one of them and do a project together. So the thing with when you build with natural materials is that it's sort of a bit more. It escapes a little bit of the traditional architectural practice because you have to be hands-on. So you have to actually have a go with the material. We can't just design on the paper because it's not a standard product. It always comes in a different shape, with a different quality, with a different color, durability, strength, Just for example, if we talk about bamboo, the same species of bamboo grown in a different farm will be different, and from a grove of bamboo, you're going to have straight poles, bendy poles, long ones, they're all different. So the approach is different. So we start kind of creating a practice that not only design, but also makes. And I think that sort of was kind of an inflection point in terms of having a really intimate relationship with the material and an approach to design that is a bit more open-minded in sense of being flexible and not be too much attached to the original design, but kind of let the design evolve as you work with the material, so a more fluent way. And in that process, we found that these lightweight materials, which are kind of very common in countries with low income, because it's an inexpensive material itself, and on those places, labor is also inexpensive. When you bring it to a context like Australia, it's kind of very difficult because here labor is very expensive. So to do something very crafty becomes almost prohibitive in a place like this. And the way we tackled that was turning each project as a research project and involve the community in making the project. So we kind of run every project as an educational project in which we call for volunteers, for people that is interested in knowing more about the material. They come with us, they help us build the project. We share all the techniques, all the tools, all the kind of know-how of the material. So by the end of the build, and these builds are usually very quick, we're talking about a few weeks usually. And by the end of the workshop, they already know, how to work with the material, and they have the satisfaction of being part of a big project and see kind of an end result in a very short period of time. So it's quite rewarding. And not only the build object, but also the connection within the community, the fact that you're working with somebody next to you, you get to know the person, you get to, share more than just what you're doing. And then you have kind of really nice bondings and really nice kind of a community connection that gives kind of another layer of sustainability to the project. It goes beyond the materiality. It's to do with community and community empowerment.
Wow, that's super cool and thorough. So maybe the next one is a somewhat loaded question, but what is sustainability to you?
Okay, so sustainability, it's a very broad concept and kind of being replaced nowadays for resilience, I guess. Sustainability for us works in several layers. So we try to keep sort of the carbon footprint of our projects as low as possible. We do lots of temporary architecture, which is kind of a branch that is not very explored. It's not, architects not very often work in temporary structure. They're more used to build buildings that last a long time. And one of the problems of architecture, I think, from a sustainable point of view, is that you design something for a particular use or a particular client with materials that usually will last 50 plus years. But then maybe 5 or 7 years down the track, somebody else buys the building and it was designed as a residential building, but he wants to use them for offices. And, the structure is not flexible enough to take the new use. They renovate the whole thing and create a bunch of waste in that process. So sustainability starts, I think, beyond the materiality of the building. It starts with the design. Creating something that can adapt and you can reuse for different purposes is kind of the first approach. I have an understanding of how long does actually has to last the structure. Do you have to design for 100 years lifespan if bottom line, in 5-10 years they're renovating the building? So I think the design has to be sustainable in terms of being able to change with time. The materials have to be sustainable in the sense that not create too much pollution, not create, not bring toxics to the environment, don't spend too much fuel, not only in the making of the material, but in transport. An example, for example, bamboo is known as a sustainable material, but if I'm building here with bamboo that comes from a different country, and I'm shipping the material here to work with it, then it's a lot less sustainable than using perhaps a local timber, So locality becomes very important. So working locally with local materials and sourcing locally all the parts that come into the building, I think is very, very important. So avoid transport. Transport is a big component of the carbon footprint of every material, and especially light, bulky materials like bamboo, which is hollow, you're shipping air. So if you ship bamboo outside, it's actually a lot of embodied energy compared to something that flat packs, for example. Mm-hmm. And then comes the component of the materiality, which we prefer to use natural materials or recycled materials. And I think there's a beauty in the reuse, and we try, every time we get to with a client, because we also do residential architecture, is how can you keep as much as possible of the existing fabric first, and then what can we use or reuse in a kind of inventive or creative way, turning something that is meant to be, for example, we've used, for example, floor that was from a basketball court and use that to clad the ceiling, for example, or use, materials or windows from old buildings. And you have to really design for that and be open, because you can't really document what you find. So you have to kind of be able to, okay, look, here goes a window, and then you find the window, and then you have to make the hole to fit that window instead of kind of, making the window fit the opening. So you have to have a different mindset, I think, and that's very important. Not have too much ego, not be too much attached to the design, and let, the different elements inform your design as you go. And one of the challenges with recycling is storage, because usually you want to recycle. We're in Sydney here, based in Sydney. Real estate here is quite expensive, so we can't afford to have a warehouse full of recycled materials that can potentially be used. So recycling starts from once you spot these materials coming off the building, you have to straight away know exactly where it goes, and try to avoid storage as much as possible, because that is sort of the weak link in recycling, is storage and sorting. So you want to kind of be as quick as possible, get it from the source that is coming straight into the final design. And then because it's that quick, you're going to be very flexible in your design to be able to change the design on the fly to adapt to that. And then the last layer, I think, of sustainability is to do with community and culture. A community, there's a strength in the community of working all together, in knowing your neighbor, that goes beyond the carbon footprint. Is to do with creating cohesion in the community, which means resilience, to be able to help each other. And if you, for example, build a project with the community, then they learn how to build it, they will know how to fix it, and they'll be able to kind of keep the ball going. While if you, for example, come up with this very nice, sustainable, passive house design, and you put it in a context and they're not involved in the process, then when that breaks down, they don't know how to repair it, they don't know how to run it, So I think we work in that sort of, on those layers that are very human, with a lot of touch. We pay a lot of attention to the materiality and the textures and the history of each of the elements. When you build something with recycled materials, it doesn't look like it's brand new that comes from the shop. It looks like it belongs to the place. There's a story behind that window that comes from that other building, or that flooring where people used to play basketball, or could be, for example, in the office, one of the columns that hold the office is a tree that was on the side that needed to be removed. It's an invasive tree, and we use that as a column of part of the building. So I think it's very important to kind of be open-minded in terms of being able to reuse all the things, and then the end result will be very sustainable, because you use very little to create a great outcome.
Super nice. So aside from the storage, so what are some other significant challenges you face when during the course of your practice?
Yeah, so I think every project is challenging in its own way. And usually the first challenge is the client, because you have to learn how he lives and how he inhabits the space, and the things that he likes and don't like. And everyone comes already with an idea, and usually that idea is very informed by media, by TV shows, by Pinterest, by this and like that. And usually those things, they come from overseas, and if you want to be sustainable, you want to be local. So that kind of first kind of connection in getting this new array of elements into the project is kind of key. But you need the client, you need everyone on the team on board. Because, for example, you're building a house or renovating a house, you want the carpenter, whoever is pulling things out, to be careful and pull them in one piece, because it's a lot easier to come with a bulldozer and break everything. But if you want to recycle something, you got to be dismantled in a different way so things can be reutilized. And it's something that starts on day one. So it's kind of, getting the team together and getting everyone on board is perhaps the most challenging thing and the most important one. But at the end of the day, the outcome is excellent, because they also are embedded in this project. It's not that they are, hiring somebody to do the job for them. They become part of the process. And by being part of the process, they get a much better understanding of in the challenges and things that we have to overcome for the project to be what we wanna be, and I think then is the storage, as I mentioned before. When you're recycling, storage is a very kind of angular stone in the sense that if you don't have where to keep things so they don't deteriorate, then it becomes very hard to recycle. Also, when using natural materials, to to be able to change the design to suit the material, or to change the design to suit the recycled material as well is challenging. Here, I don't know how it is over there, but here the design process and the building process is quite fragmented. So there's lots of layers, of bureaucracy, administrative, and you have the architect, but also the engineer, the builder, the hydraulic engineer, and every kind of, even from, the waterproof, all the specialities is quite fragmented, and it's kind of very challenging for us to kind of bring people aboard to work in a different way, because you're not dealing just with one, you're dealing with a big team, and that's also challenging. But again, it's about attitude and the process. I think if you're inclusive and you kind of make everyone be part of the decision making, then we're all responsible, and there's no kind of that game of blaming each other for something didn't go as expected, and then we're all kind of on the same page trying to solve the problem as they go. Because when you renovate an existing building, we do lots of renovations and extensions because we believe that there's an asset in keeping some of what was there already. There's history, there's culture, there's materials, there's already an existing fabric. If you can recycle foundations, plumbing, and a bunch of things, it's very good because you're building less. Bottom line, if you want to be very sustainable, don't build. The more the solution is not building a more sustainable building. The solution is how we can readapt so we don't have to build. How can we readapt the existing fabric? Because there's enough fabric. How can we readapt that to suit a new way of living that we're living now, which is different to when whatever building was built probably 50 or 100 years ago. And we do a lot of that. Apart from our project that you probably know, the big kind of temporary structures with bamboo, we do a lot of residential and kind of, small, more domestic works that fall more into this kind of recycling and reusing practice.
Nice. Will you share with us a project of yours and about its processes maybe, and then its outcomes?
Yeah, so one of the projects that I'd like to share with you is a project that we finished this summer here in Australia. So that was, we finished in December. And it's part of a long sort of tradition of projects that we've been building with the Woodford Folk Festival up in Queensland. That's kind of Brisbane, 1.5 hours inland. It's a beautiful festival. It's a folk festival. It's the largest gathering of Australian artists that happens every year and runs between Christmas and New Year's Eve. And every year we go there and we build a big project, mostly with bamboo. Sometimes we also use other sort of local natural material like branches or self-seeded trees, but mostly with bamboo. And it's a very beautiful experience because the festival has a 1-month setup, and it runs with a system of volunteers. So there's around more than 1,000 volunteers that do from, setting up tents or venues or, signage or everything. And we have a crew, which is called the Special Projects Crew, which we do the big structure with bamboo. We've done kind of the welcoming gate or a gathering space. This year, we built a pavilion called Chrysalis, which is a woven pavilion made of bamboo, which was supposed to be the entry and kind of a meeting point. And it was a very interesting experience because it was probably one of the fastest builds we've done with a group that we always do this kind of first round when we meet the whole team and ask everyone, have you ever built with bamboo before? And this time, no one in the team had previous experience with bamboo. So we had 15 young enthusiasts that were, ranging from 18 to, 40, 50 years old, that had no experience with bamboo, but are very keen. And bamboo is a very forgiving material. It's very lightweight and empowering. So you can hold a big pole of bamboo 12 meters long on your shoulder and carry it by yourself. So it's quite light and it's quite nice to work with. It has a nice relation with the human body. And we did the set out on site, and we teach them how to split the bamboo, how to weave with it. We did some bundle beams and different elements. And look, after 3-4 days, they went also to the forest to harvest. So we start from the ground up. We always start with the harvest. So there's a forest, a grove nearby, and we go and cut all the old poles and take them to site. It's like a 1-hour drive, so quite local. And then we process the material, we split it, and everything done by hand with handsaws and pliers and machetes. And we prep all the material and start building this beautiful pavilion, which again, we had a footprint of how it will go, but originally we wanted to have a big span, which the material wasn't stiff enough to do, and we end up imploding the whole dome into the center, which ended up working a lot better and creating a much nicer space. And then finalizing with the weaving of bamboo on top to create a shade structure. So it's an open shade structure, and it had really good reception by everyone, and we learn new things. We create a new sort of connection to the ground that we didn't work before, and we create a new system of arches that combine whole poles and strips of splits, and they bundle together and create a very interesting sort of hybrid structure in which there's a strap on the outside that was purely under tension, and there's this kind of whole poles of bamboo that are kind of flexed, pushing out, and create like a very sturdy system that we kind of work out on site by having a go, by playing, and created one arch, and then we all, 4 people on each side holding and trying to bring them together. So, to bend it until it broke. And then we realized, okay, that is how much we can bend. We broke a few before we understood what was the actual bend that the material can take. And then when we worked that one out, then we start, kind of fabricating them, in sequence, and then we array them all and erect them all, and it was a super nice project in the sense that it was a very steep learning curve. We learned a lot. The group was very nice. They learned a lot as well, and now there's a beautiful pavilion at the entry, which has almost like no impact in the environment, in the sense that it's just some plants that we cut from here and brought here. By the way, bamboo is a giant grass, so you cut it and it just shoots stronger the next season. And by the time this pavilion breaks down, because festivals are about renewal, so you don't want to have the structure sitting there forever. You want to have every year something new. This one will probably last 2 or 3 years, which is perfect for the festival. And then when we bring it down, it will go back to the earth, go mulch. And more or less 3 years is what it takes for a new pole of bamboo to be ready and mature to build again. So we're creating like a closed loop, which is very interesting, because usually festivals and events, they create a lot of waste in a very short period of time. Let's say you have an art exhibition, the amount of pine wood and gyprock and things, that you used to do a set and then goes to the rubbish. Or if you go to a festival again, it's always plywood and all these things that, end up being chopped full of screws and things. This is, almost zero waste, and it kind of, ticks all the boxes for a temporary event. And there's this sense of, bringing the community together and creating renewal, refreshing the structure. Probably in 1 or 2 years' time, you look a little bit sad because it's been under the weather all this time. We add more material to it. We're probably going to put new strands of bamboo in, and then you get another year or 2 out of it. So it's kind of a good project, a good example of a temporary structure with a very low carbon footprint, and creating an amazing space for people to gather.
That's super nice.
Super nice. And I think that's kind of what is interesting about what we do, is that we work on that kind of line between art and architecture. So this one is more in the architecture side because there's sort of a use attached to it, but other works, like one we did for the Biennale of Sydney, is an art installation done with bamboo. And again, creating like a big intervention on a big space. It was like 100 meters long and 40 meters wide, and flying like at 16 meters of height, was quite big. And it was a similar process of going to the forest, harvest the material, teach people how to work with it, and then do like the installation. And that one we unpack and is now in storage to be deployed in a different place in the future. And again, kind of, working with a natural material, and again, having all that process of researching and having a go with it. Because I think what the difference between art and architecture nowadays is quite a thin line. I think the use that is attached to the structure is usually what makes it be art or architecture. But I think working with artists and with makers give you an insight with material that is really good, and then you can really push the material and design things that are outstanding, that are different. It's really easy to, be formed as an architect and kind of follow the classic kind of grid of architecture and build with the materials that are in the hardware shop, and it's all, if you think all the industrialized materials, they are designed to fit in a container, really. They are designed to maximize the profit of the supplier and the retailer and kind of, fast installation. But it's not designed to be disposed of, it's not designed to create other shapes, for example. So I think when you start playing, having a go with the material and playing, then you can really do something. And that applies to all the materials, not only natural materials. For example, I had some students at uni, and we did like a material-based studio. And the idea was each student to have a go with a material, So if you're thinking of concrete, well, concrete is something you can cast on any shape. So why do we mostly do concrete slabs and concrete walls and columns and beams? And we don't do all the organic shape that you could do by casting something, because really you can do anything you want. It's a liquid that then solidifies, it's magic, But like most of the people don't use it that way. Or with bricks, everyone just build a normal brick. Well, why don't you have a go and find different ways of arraying the brick, And what if you slice it in the diagonal? And why if you, try a different way, if you tumble it and kind of break and erode the corners. So if you have an approach, I guess, to architecture that is more material based, and that's where we overlap with art, then you can do more interesting things. And there's a sustainability aspect to it, because if you know and you get a good understanding of the material, you're gonna know exactly what is the best material for the particular project, which one is the one that can give you the span using the less material, for example, or which one, is the one that, will create less waste, because you're part of the process. But if you just specify from the drawing board, and you're detached from the materiality, you really don't know the opportunities they're missing, because you can do something way more exciting if you had a better understanding of it.
I guess my favorite part is the spontaneous aspect to it, because it makes every project like an art project then, right? As you go, you tailor on the spot, and it can yield different results from what it was planned before.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that, it's a mindset, really. And I think you do need a plan. You need to have a plan. You need to have a design to start with. You can't go to the side with nothing, You need to have an idea of what you're doing, but you have to leave room for movement. I think that's very important, because if you stick to design all the time, I mean, there's a virtue on design. If somebody else is building and you're not going to be there, then yes, you have to detail the whole thing for them to actually do it. But if you can be more involved with your build and spend more time on site, there's lots of decisions you can do on the spot that will make a better outcome.
Yeah. Cool. So lastly, I actually want to ask you about how do you, since we're talking about, lifetime sustainability. So I'm curious, how do you view a designer's role in the life cycle of a project?
That's very interesting. I think it is very important to go back to your buildings, because and see how they perform. Go back to your buildings 1 year after, then go back 5 years after, and then go back maybe 10 years after, and meet the new owner probably 10 years after, and ask them, were there any problems in this thing? Did you have any leaks in the roof? Would you have changed something? I think communication is key. If you just design a product and let it go and you detach from it, really, and there's no follow-up, really you're not building something. You're not building your database to make a better design the next time. So I think it's very important to go back, and we always do. We always go back to our projects and check in, to see how they're going. Especially also these temporary structures, we go and check in the integrity. We see what the species of bamboo degrade faster than others. We see what are the things that are failing, what things we should pay more attention to. Even in the process of making, for example, that last project I was commenting in Woodford Chrysalis, it was such a rush build that that there wasn't much quality control in the details, of tying and stuff. And then when we went back to it, we said, okay, we have to reinforce these knots because they were done in a rush. So I think coming back and checking in is it is very important. And I see that as designers, we also are educators. When you put a design out, people will copy your design or will get inspired by your design. So there's a responsibility as a designer that you're also putting ideas out there, and it's good kind of, when you're building with somebody to share that. I think the longevity or sustainability of a project is also putting the user on board, and so they understand the building and they know how to run the building. Like a big part of the pollution of a building, okay, it's just when you build it, but then running the building, So you design without taking into account, orientation, climate, kind of basic things, to capture the sun in winter and block it in summer. Well, depending on your location. Here in Sydney, it's quite temperate, so it's usually most about, shading and ventilation. And you do good shading and ventilation, you probably don't need air conditioning for most. Maybe there'll be like 5 hot days that you'll be hot, but most of the time, just by opening the windows and wearing a t-shirt and shorts, you're fine. It's all you need. And the same as winter, when it gets cold, usually, for example, here where I'm here now, this all north facing, lovely sun in the middle of the winter, the heater is off. We don't need to heat this house at this stage. And the studio that is on what used to be the swimming pool, because it's mostly underground, also gives this kind of lovely temperature. But if somebody doesn't know this and lives, all close, and then you'll probably overheat with too much sun. So you have to know when to open the windows, when to put the blinds down. So if you also teach them how to run the building, then they will need less electricity to run systems. All these systems, air conditioning and heating, were not available 100 years ago, and that's why vernacular design is so relevant, because they manage to have thermal comfort and very nice buildings without having air conditioning. The minute we invented air conditioning, and we have this kind of and that came with modern architecture, this idea that we can dissociate from the orientation and the climate and everything, and just have a machine kind of keeping the temperature right. I think that kind of created a lot of conflict with the environment. And I think now there's a comeback, and that's why we're looking into this vernacular architecture, because there's a knowledge that is being lost, and we have to recover, because things used to be a lot simpler, And it doesn't mean that you have to copy the house that was designed 100 years ago. Is that you have to understand the principles, that you can do a contemporary design using those simple systems, passive systems for keeping the house, warm or fresh in summer.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. It was super fun hearing about the studio's approach. And actually, personally, what caught my attention in your website was when you write, you as a studio utilize design and making process as a means of open source research and development. So I'm glad that we got to talk about all that, and because it means a lot of things, right? Including the education, the
and
big
and welcome everyone to hop onto our website. We have lots of information there that we're sharing, and we love to get in touch with new people and share everything we know. We want to make a big community in the world, and that's what I think the world is lacking. I mean, we're in the kind of communication age, but for some reason we're so disconnected. And I think important also to say that Cape Urban is a big group of people. So I'm just one of them. There's Nikki, Jed, Mercurio, Loki, there's so many friends that are part of this family. And every time we do a project, the family grows. And we could be 30, 40 or 50 people. So it's whatever you see on the website is many hands, it's not just one hand. And it's not only on the making, but also on the design. We're always pitching ideas and checking in with each other to get the best design out there.
Super cool. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing today, JP, and keep doing great work.
Thank you. Thanks for chatting with us. It's great.